Has your clutch cable broken? Do you need to replace it? Well, this is the video for you. What is up, guys? It has been a while since I've done a G310 video, so I figure I'd upload one for you guys. And in this video, that's all we're going to do. We're going to go over the process to replace the clutch cable on the G310R. The tools we're going to need for the job today: steel rule, a pair of diagonal cutters or snips, whatever you call them, a long extension, a short extension, a 5mm Allen socket, a 5mm Allen wrench, a magnet, two 12mm wrenches, a pair of pliers, zip ties, and you'll also need the clutch cable as well. I'll attach a part number or a link in the description below. Whatever I find, I'll just put a link there to it in the description below for you guys. Those are the tools you need. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer before I actually start this job, guys. It is actually pretty difficult to replace the clutch cable on this bike. Watch the video the whole way through and make sure you're prepared, because I drew a little blood when I did it. There's a lot of tight spaces. It is frustrating to get to the different parts. So just a word of caution before you start this. First thing we have to do to get access to the entire clutch cable is remove the seat as well as this tank cover here. So the seat's just a simple key. The seat comes off. Just to make it quick and easy for you, we have to remove this screw, this one. There's a screw down here that we have to remove. There's a screw on the side here that we have to remove, and there's a same screw on the other side that we have to remove. The screw here. I'll just show the other side. It's a screw here as well as here. Tank cover, there's a rubber seal that goes around the top of the gas cap here. So there's a rubber seal here. You just want to lift straight up on that, and then you want to just pull out on the sides. I left the screw down in here. That'll just pull up and out as I loosen this. I want to pull up a little bit and out on the sides, and then we'll lift up and back. That's how we take that tank cover off there. Now we have access to our clutch cable. If we could trace the clutch line here, it goes off of the lever here and then down underneath the triple tree here. And it comes right here. Then it snakes behind all this stuff. You can't really see it well on the video, but it comes all the way around to here. And this is your first zip tie that mounts that on right here. And then it goes around to the other side right here, and you can see it's secured with a second zip tie here, and then it runs down to the actual cable mount and adjustment point down there that I've gone over in previous videos. Alright, so that's how it's routed. It's going to be kind of difficult to see. It's hard to really show you. But I'll do my best when I'm going through this. Now, the first thing we have to do before we remove this cable is we have to both loosen the bracket down here, and we also have to loosen this adjuster up here. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. This one was already loose, so all we got to do is tighten this into the lever mount, we'll call that. All right, and then once we have that as loose as it can go, we're going to leave this nice line here to go all the way through. Alright, that's loose, that's set up. Let's go down to the engine. Right now, in order to do this, we just want to reach over with our 12mm wrench, and we will loosen the nut that mounts that there. Now to loosen this cable, we want to loosen this adjusting nut all the way out and push in on the cable. So that butts up against that nut there, and this is nice loose cable. Alright, now we have that loose, everything's loose, the cable is loose, we can now start to take this cable apart. Alright, first we want to remove the retention strap here, just set that off to the side, somewhere where we're not going to lose it. That's probably not the best place, but that's where I'm setting it. Then what we want to do is just remove the cable from the lever. Now, more than likely the reason you're replacing the cable is because it's broken, so this part should probably be pretty easy. You just want to make sure that you get the cable out of the lever. This cable, you just want to get it lined up, take it out of the line there, and then just push straight down. Get that out of the actual cable, or actual lever. Now you want to make sure you get this end out, especially if the cable is broken. This end may still be stuck in here, so you want to make sure you get this end out of the lever. Alright, now that that's out, we can move down to the bottom. I'll show you how to disconnect it down there. Alright, so down at the bottom here, now that we have that cable nice and loose up there, take the actual lever, pull that out. Alright, so there's a little slot here that cable will slide out of. So all we need to do is just pull out on that and then push that out of the way a little bit there. Push that little part on the lever there out of the way, and that cable should come out of there. Alright, once that cable is free, we can now start the process of actually removing the cable from the bike. Alright, so now what you want to do is either loosen these two mounting bolts here or actually remove the bolts. I remove the bolts, but I think you could get away with just loosening the bolts up and sliding the cable out on the bracket. But you do have to get that bracket a little bit loose because it is difficult with that bracket tight, because that cable is at a hard bend, so it is difficult to remove that. So either remove the bolts like I did, or just loosen the bolts up enough so you can actually remove that cable from the bracket. Fish our cable up and out. And this cable is quite tight. And then we can undo our bracket. We're going to have to fish this cable up through the bike, so we want to take off as much stuff as we can so we don't lose it in the process of taking this apart. So take these adjuster nuts off, and this is just mainly not to scratch or gouge anything. Take that off of there. Now our cable is ready to be fished through. Now, one thing to note before we actually start removing this, we want to look down here and see how the cable is actually routed. We'll notice that it goes on top of the wires as well as these lines here. So when we bring that back through, we want to make sure that we have that on top resting there, and then the zip tie went under this zip tie here. So let's start fishing that out. Through here, again, we take note as to where the cable is run. For the most part, it's run to the outside of other cables. And as it comes up through here, it's going to be routed underneath the brake lines here, and then it's going to come up under the triple tree there. So we're just going to pull out on this cable and help it fish its way through. And if you pull and it gets stuck, stop pulling. You just want to nicely pull this out so that it doesn't hook on anything and break anything. So you just want to make sure that as you're pulling this out, it's coming out nice and easily and nothing's catching or breaking as you're coming out. Push that out, up and through. That's how you remove the cable. I'm all sweaty now because this is a pretty intense job. So once the cable's out, we then go get our new cable. Number one thing I always recommend you do, make sure they got you the correct cable for your bike. And you can do that by holding the two cables next to one another and making sure all the bends are correct, that all the ends are correct, as well as how the cables hook in. You want to make sure all that stuff looks identical to the cable that you're replacing it with, so that you don't put the cable in and then find out that it was the wrong cable. So spend some time, look over that cable, make sure you have the correct cable before you route this cable back in through. I'm going to show you the process in which to route the cable back in the bike. Now we're going to start up here, and we're going to fish our line down through here, and then it's going to come out the bottom here. We're going to this brake line, and then we're just going to push the line through, and again it was just a straight shot all the way back to here, where it then took a hard left over to the other side of the bike. So the first thing we're going to do is get the cable to this point here. Start by fishing this end down. Again, if yours came with hardware, remove all that hardware now. If yours came with hardware, remove all that hardware now so that it's easier to slide this through. Start down. And we want to make sure that we are on the correct side of the cables here. So we're under the cable here, and then we want to start to fish that in through there. So it's kind of a down and basically curve it, go under through the cables here. Now this should just go through. Just keep an eye on it as you're fishing it through.
Hold this one for a minute.
Don't want to force it in anywhere. It should slide nice and easily through. Alright, as you can see, staying under these cables and beside them. And we came out here to this point. Now we want to make sure that we fish it over to the other side. So I can reach up in between the frame here, and then as I route that down through, I can come over to the other side all the way until up here I'm about where I was. So if we look up here, alright, so if we look up here, this is about where this is located here. So that means I should have enough slack on that cable there to route that in on the bottom side. Before we actually route this back in, is we want to assemble our cable down here. Now to do that, we'll just take one of these adjusting nuts here. We'll thread that all the way up. Then we'll take our mounting bracket. We'll make sure we install that properly. It's installed this way here, because when it's installed on the bike, it'll sit like this. Alright, so we want to make sure that these are toward the back, and that's how the cable is going to sit, just like that. Adjusting nut just so we hold this in place. It doesn't fall off on us. And then the way we put this end on here is we take the larger end here and it'll sit on there just like that. Alright, so that's set up properly just like that. If you need reference of that, that's how you set that up. Again, this is going to sit like this on the bike. Make sure that we have this cable running again over top of this hose here, this wire here, and we want to fish this down through there. Again, don't get crazy bending this cable, but you can put a little bit of a bend in it. It's not going to affect it for the short time that it is bent. And we'll fish that in there, that down in there. Make sure we don't get bound up when we're doing so. There we go. That is nice and in there. Now all we have to do is reattach the bracket, reinstall our 3 zip ties, and then we will reinstall our cable. Got that on a couple of threads there. It's good. Then we'll come down while we have everything nice and loose still, as far as the cable goes. And we will route this end of our cable back into here on this clutch actuator lever here. Make sure that that's in and seated up against there nicely with that little end sticking out just like that. Alright, and leave that kind of taut there. Routed, we'll then slowly pull out on this. We don't want to pull that out of the lever on the bottom, so make sure you do it slowly. And if you have to, check down at the bottom, make sure it did not come disconnected. And then we'll just slide this dust boot cover back on. And we'll install the cable in through here on the lever. Clip that in place. Make sure it clips up there. You heard a nice clip. Then we want to route that cable in through here. Set that in there nicely. Got our little dust boot cover on there. Now we'll adjust the clutch. I was over this in a previous video on how to properly adjust the clutch on this bike, so I'm not really going to go into details. Just make sure you adjust the clutch properly. Big settings on the bottom and finer settings up top. We're going to put the tank cover back on, tighten all the bolts down for that, put the seat on, and then this job will be done. That's how you replace the clutch cable on a BMW G310R. Now what I noticed doing this job, it is difficult. You have to have patience, and as long as you follow those steps, you should be able to replace the clutch cable on your G310 without an issue. Hopefully the video was helpful for you. Again, as always, thank you guys for subscribing, commenting, and sharing my videos. Again, with your help and support, I can build the channel bigger and stronger. And thanks for checking this one out. We'll see you in the next video, guys. See you later.